In this video, I talk about why you shouldn't track your heart rate, VO2 max, cadence, and a bunch of other metrics while you are training for your first half or full marathon. My name is Tony Johnson, and we've helped hundreds of runners train for half or full marathons, and I've come to the conclusion that most people overcomplicate their running. So in this training, you will see exactly what you need to focus on. Enjoy. Why you shouldn't track your heart rate, cadence, or VO2 max while you are training for your first half or full marathon. Maybe you're training for your first half or full marathon right now and you're taking a look on the internet or on YouTube and you see all of this information. You see one person say this, another person say that, one person says do this, another person says don't do that, and it's just very confusing, it's overwhelming, and you're stuck in a spot where you're kind of just throwing your hands up, not knowing what to do. And so I want to clear up exactly what you need to focus on while training for your first half or full marathon. And so what most runners focus on is they're focusing on their pace per mile. They're focusing on how fast they should be running each mile and should each mile be at a different speed. They focus on their heart rate and making sure that it's in a certain range and their cadence, that they're taking enough steps while they're running. They're focusing on the zone that they're running in. If they're in zone 2 or zone 3, they're paying attention to their speed intervals and the distance and how fast they're doing them. They're trying to measure their VO2 max. They're trying to pay attention to their mileage of how many miles they're running on a weekly basis, how many miles they're running on a monthly basis, and a daily basis. They're focusing on all the different type of runs, the fart legs, the long runs, the easy runs, the tempo runs, right? All these different type of runs, and they're also paying attention to how many runs per week are they doing? Are they running 4 times per week? Are they doing 5 times a week? Are they doing running every single day? And so you have all of these things that the typical runner is trying to manage and trying to focus on. And the reality is only a few of these are actually important. And the ones that you actually need to focus on, first and foremost, is your mileage. You got to make sure you're actually running enough miles to be into cardiovascular shape for your half or full marathon. And it also helps from a mental standpoint, just knowing that you ran enough miles during your training to go into your race with confidence, saying, okay, I'm prepared. I ran enough miles for my half marathon. I ran 10 miles. If I can run 10 miles, then I can run 13. For a full marathon, if you can run 20 miles during training, then it's like, okay, I ran 20 miles. I know I can go from 20 to 26 on the race. And so mileage is by far the most important, and actually hitting the milestones throughout your training. So when you go into your race, you'll have the confidence on the day of your race. So by far, the most important thing is mileage. And if that's the only thing you focus on, that's fine. That's really it. The most important thing is mileage. And then the second thing, it's like, okay, your pace per mile. And you only need to focus on your pace per mile if you actually have a goal time for your half or full marathon. If you just want to finish the race, there's no need to pay attention to your overall pace per mile. If you do have a goal, then you got to make sure that you're running at a certain speed. So if you want to run a 4-hour marathon, well, you got to make sure that you can actually run a 9-minute mile. But if you just want to finish it and it's your first race, there's really no need. You just got to go out there and make sure you're running at a reasonable time. Now, obviously, if you're running 20-minute miles, well, there's a chance that you'll probably get disqualified. But if you're running, 10-minute mile, 11-minute mile, 12-minute mile, you're totally fine. You really don't need to worry about your pace per mile unless you have a goal of when you want to finish it. And then the other thing I think that's important to focus on is the number of runs you do per week. Like I was saying, other people are focusing on trying to run 5, 6, 7 times a week. I think you should only focus on running 3 times per week and breaking up the 3 runs. And so run on like a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Saturday. And the reason I say this is because if you are training for your first half or full marathon, if you overdo the amount of times you run per week, well, you're increasing the likelihood of an overuse injury, runner's knee, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, etc., because you're essentially going from 0 to 100. You may not be running right now, or you may only be running a couple miles. If you dive into the deep end of trying to run every single day, that's when the overuse injuries start to kick in. You're not allowing your body to fully recover after each run. And so if you run, let's say on a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Saturday, well, now you're giving your body enough time to fully recover after each run. It's usually not being fully recovered and then trying to work out that leads to injuries. And so I think you should only run 3 times a week, especially if you're training for your first half or full marathon. Now, if you want to qualify for Boston, okay, well, there's all of these change, but for your first one, no, you're good. You only need to run 3 times a week. And then the second thing that's kind of important to focus on is the type of runs that you do. Like I was saying here, there's a million different type of runs. You could make the argument you really only need to do 2 type of runs. Easier run, a couple easy runs during the week, and then a long run on the weekend. That's really it. I do a little bit more than that. I'll do a short, a medium, and a long run. My long runs are obviously on the weekends, and then I'll do a short and a medium during the week, and that's more of a mileage thing. And then if I have a time goal, which I usually do, then I will focus on my medium run, running at your goal marathon pace. But for the most part, the best thing you can do is not pay attention to half of this. You really don't need to pay attention to your VO2 max. When I ran my first marathon 5 years ago, I had no idea what my VO2 max was. I had no idea what zone 2 was or any of those zone runnings. The type of runs, I didn't even know there were different type of runs. I didn't pay attention to my heart rate or even really my cadence. I didn't pay attention to any of this. All I really focused on, my very first marathon, which I did 5 years ago, was the mileage, and that before my marathon, that I was able to run 20 miles. That was the main thing I focused on. And then you'd want to break it down and take more of a strategic approach so you actually get there. But the main thing I was focused on was my mileage. And then the next thing I was focused on was okay, let's make sure I can actually run a sub 9-minute mile. And I always just naturally, the way I trained was to run 3 times a week, because I started off trying to run 5 times a week and I ended up getting injured. And so I was okay, I'm just going to run 3 times a week. But that was really it. Kept it nice, simple, easy. Didn't let outside distractions and all this extra noise, get in the way and get confused. Because, like I was saying, if you go into your race confused, not sure if you trained properly, if you did too much, if you didn't do enough, well, that's going to affect with your overall confidence. And a lot of running is mental, and so you don't want to overwhelm yourself. And you just want to make sure you have the right plan that's customized for you. And so that's what's really important is, depending on who you're listening to, you got to make sure that person is giving you advice based on your current situation. And so if you're training for your first half or full marathon, well, this is the advice you need just down here. You don't need to be paying attention to if someone's talking about their VO2 max if you're training for your first half or full marathon. That's just going to overcomplicate it. People will talk about their heart rate. I'm just like, first off, the Garmin and the Apple Watch, they usually don't even give you an accurate heart rate. Like if you have a heart rate monitor, that's the most accurate. And so if you're trying to read your heart rate from an Apple Watch, it's going to be inaccurate. So there's no point to even monitoring that. And really just keep it simple. It's very simple. And if you're okay, well, this makes sense. This is easy. This is doable. And you're wanting a training plan. Well, down below, you can download my free half and full marathon training plan. I call it the perfect training plan PDF. There's a 12-week half marathon training plan that tells you exactly what days to run and how far to run. And then there's a 16-week full marathon training plan that tells you exactly what days to run and how far to run. So if you want those training plans, it will be in the link description. So I hope you enjoyed this training.